If the Trump administration is trying to put Harvard University, the nation's oldest college, out of business, today we learned the White House is set to pull all the remaining federal funding that flows through the school. That's about $100 million, according to estimates. That is in addition to the billions of dollars in research funding, including extremely crucial biomedical research, the administration has already frozen at the university. And of course, last week, the White House halted Harvard's ability to enroll international students, which the New York Times reports could impact about 25% of the student body. Here's the thing. People all over the world desperately want to come to the U.S. to study because this country has for decades now offered the gold standard in terms of higher education globally. It's one area of just genuine American exceptionalism. And so international students are a huge boon to American universities and to the American students at those universities and all the economic activity around it.
For a man who claims to represent the party of family values, we sure don't hear from Donald Trump's family all that often. Of course, we hear from them in the headlines when we see their corruption, shady business deals, how they profit off the presidency, or Don Jr.'s recreational activities. But other than that, they're pretty silent. Especially Melania Trump, who no one ever talks about unless they're talking about how little we see her. And that's why it was so surprising that Melania snapped and spoke out for really the first time in Donald Trump's presidency, addressing one of the scandals plaguing him in this current moment and humiliating his entire family. We are going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me now. Before we can get into the freakout that Melania had first, we need a little bit of context, not just on what Donald Trump is so upset about, but also why he's so upset with his younger son. And it starts with this clip of Chris Hayes breaking down Trump's attack on Harvard.
Donald Trump wants the most powerful and legendary institution of higher education in this country, arguably in the world, to bend the knee to his whims and become a kind of controlled asset of MAGA. That is the goal here. And yes, let's be clear, it's pretty hard to root for an elite institution like Harvard, right? With a $53 billion endowment. But this attack on the university isn't really about Harvard at all, qua Harvard, and it isn't happening in a vacuum. It is the latest escalation in the administration's ongoing day-by-day battle, and this is going to sound hyperbolic, but I really believe it, to destroy all independent sources of knowledge and fact-finding in our free and open society. As the writer Adam Serwer put it in his latest piece to The Atlantic, by destroying knowledge, Trumpists seek to make the country more amenable to their political domination and to prevent meaningful democratic checks on their behavior. Their victory, though, would do much more than that. It would annihilate some of the most effective systems for aggregating, accumulating, and applying human knowledge that have ever existed. Without those systems, America could find itself plunged into a new dark age. To that end, we are seeing the administration run this playbook towards, again, any independent source of authority. The White House has already pulled $400 million in federal grants for Columbia University, for example. It might try to claw back even more money this week after announcing trumped-up charges of civil rights violations against the school stemming from campus protests about Israel's war on Gaza. In a new piece for The New Yorker, Jelani Cobb, the dean of Columbia's journalism school, quotes one expert who taught at both Columbia and Harvard as saying, quote, "I've studied McCarthyism's impact on higher education for 50 years. What's happening now is worse." Cobb adds, quote, "The biggest mistake that some universities have made in responding to the White House has been to presume it is operating in good faith."
The Republican Party has been attacking intellectualism, expertise, and going to war with higher education for decades. Now, this is nothing new, but Donald Trump's attack on Harvard is a step above. And it's not just because he hates anyone who's smarter than him, which means he hates practically everybody. It's also not just because Harvard is one of the few institutions that is speaking out against Donald Trump and his administration in such a powerful way. There is something clearly underlying Donald Trump's real animosity towards the oldest college in America. And part of it can be explained with this clip of him talking about his son.
Is Barron's aptitude, in your view, business or politics?
Maybe technology. He can look at a computer. I try turning off his car, I turn it off, I turn off his laptop. I said, oh, good. Now, and I go back 5 minutes later, he's got his laptop. I said, how'd you do that? None of your business, Dad. No, he's got an unbelievable aptitude in technology.
Wow, the boy genius Barrett. Over here, we got a real will hunting situation. Do they have a Nobel Prize yet for turning a computer on and off? Can we get this guy an award? This is incredible. That's, I guess, Donald Trump's view of his son, which is, I guess, nice that he has a positive perception about anyone but himself. But clearly, he thinks that Barrett is the smartest person on the planet, right? So, of course, he should be going to the best institution, but he's not. Nothing against NYU, but it's certainly not a Harvard or MIT, which Donald Trump is attacking. And that's certainly a reason a lot of people have speculated why that Barron, unlike many sons and daughters of former presidents, did not get into Harvard, and that is why Melania Trump is surprisingly speaking out. Yes, that's the reason, and we can see it all. Right here, Melania Trump slams online rumors that Trump's vendetta against Harvard is due to Barron's. Social media users began to speculate that Trump's youngest was rejected from the prestigious institution last week in a highly unusual move. First Lady Melania Trump made a public statement to deny claims that her husband decided to go to war with Harvard University because the school allegedly rejected their son Barron last spring. Social media rumors began circulating last week after Trump froze $2.65 billion in federal grants and attempted to block international students from enrolling at the university. A move that a U.S. judge later blocked on Friday. Users on X were quick to react to Trump's drastic measures, with some even suggesting that the president is jealous that the former President Barack Obama's daughter, Malia, is a Harvard graduate. Melania's spokesperson, Nick Clemens, told the Palm Beach Post, Barron did not apply to Harvard, and any assertion that he or anyone on his behalf applied is completely false. After being accepted to a lot of colleges, Donald Trump confirmed in September last year that his youngest son would attend NYU's Stern School to study a degree in business where annual tuition starts at about $62,000 a year. An Exus user named Doug Wall was among those who claimed the mega outrage towards Harvard is because the school would not accept Barron. Now, I don't know if Barron did or did not apply or get into Harvard, but the fact that during this time in which Donald Trump is going to war with the oldest college in America, Melania felt compelled to speak out on record. Give a statement about Barron is just embarrassing. And it just goes to show how out of touch these people are. Really, the whole MAGA movement. You know, you heard Donald Trump and Republicans say this, so often speak about them being the party of common sense on the campaign trail. They care about common sense. That couldn't be anything from the truth. This isn't a party driven by facts, reason, or logic like the MAGA influencers online claim. This is a party very clearly driven by personal grievance. It is what Donald Trump, whether Barron got rejected from Harvard or not, is doing with every single action this administration undertakes. Why do you think Republicans are so caught up in attacking trans kids who just want to play sports with their friends? Because they'll go after anyone who makes them uncomfortable, who disrupts their worldview, although it has nothing to do with them. These are weird people obsessed with themselves. It is a petty politics driven by the pettiest, most petulant child in America who somehow became president again. We cannot act like this is anything other than a self-serving movement in MAGA that does not actually understand any of the values that it purports to claim about. That is the truth of this movement couldn't be clear. They do not care about what they claim to. And that's very obvious in Donald Trump's pardons that we have seen as of recently.
Now, Trump pardoning random corrupt MAGA officials, which is what this is a case of, is a scandal unto itself. And Jenkins is far from the only example. But it's especially galling when you consider the people Trump actually does want to prosecute. I mean, it was just last week when Trump called for investigations into several celebrities, Bruce Springsteen, Beyonce, Oprah, claiming that their endorsements of Kamala Harris during the 2024 election somehow constituted illegal campaign contributions. Now, all of those claims appeared to be completely baseless, and forgive me for this one, ludicrously Trumpy. But if Donald Trump is going to claim he really, really cares about illegal campaign contributions, well, then maybe he shouldn't have just pardoned a corrupt sheriff who took illegal campaign bribes to give unqualified people positions of power. Maybe not. And it's not just this one case. I mean, on almost every issue Trump claims to care about, there's a pardon that proves he doesn't really care at all. For instance, Trump and his presidential BFF, you know who I'm talking about, have spent the last several months claiming they are really concerned about so-called waste and fraud in America's entitlement programs. We've covered here on this show how Trump and Musk's changes to Social Security have made it significantly harder for seniors to get help with their benefits, all in the name of rooting out fraud. We've also covered how Trump's big ugly bill in Congress would make dramatic cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, also in the name, according to them, of course, of rooting out fraud. I mean, just listen to the way they talk about this basically anytime they are asked about their highly unpopular cuts to these programs.
We have not cut Medicaid. What we're doing, Margaret, is working on fraud, waste, and abuse.
We're also identifying shocking levels of incompetence and probable fraud in the Social Security program.
Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
Let's say Social Security didn't send out their checks. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. A fraudster always makes the loudest noise, screaming, yelling, and complaining.
I mean, that clip. We're not making any cuts is basically their message. It's all about finding fraud in their definition. And anyone who complains about it must be a fraudster themselves. Now, given their intense concern surrounding this issue, a spoken concern, I should say, you would think the Trump administration would be very sensitive about associating itself with anyone even remotely connected to actual entitlement fraud, right? No, of course not. Because last month, Donald Trump pardoned this guy, Paul Walzak. And what was Paul Walzak convicted for? What was his crime? Here it is from the New York Times. Between 2016 and 2019, Walzak withheld more than $10 million from the paychecks of his employees under the pretext of using it for their Social Security, Medicare, and federal income taxes. Instead, he used some of the money to buy a $2 million yacht and to pay for travel and purchases at high-end retailers, including Bergdorf Goodman and Cartier. In other words, this guy took money from the paychecks of his employees that was supposed to be paid into their Medicare and Social Security savings. It was their money. And instead, he literally bought a yacht and shopped at Bergdorf. And today, the New York Times has new details about how the pardon for that fraudster came to be. The Times reports that Walzak submitted a pardon application to President Trump around Inauguration Day. Then his mother, and here's the key part, was invited to a $1 million person fundraiser dinner last month that promised face-to-face access to Mr. Trump at his private Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida. Less than 3 weeks after she attended the dinner, Mr. Trump signed a full and unconditional pardon.
These people, like what they are, weirdos, out of touch, obsessed with themselves, and call them out. We're certainly going to be doing so on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.